If you need to plug in your laptop, go ahead. You're already set up. You're good. Okay. All right. You can proceed.
Please, the court, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when we're doing jury selection, I talked to you about being legal investigators. The object of all legal investigation is the discovery of truth. That's why you're here. The question is really, why are you here? I want to put you at ease through this trial. It's going to be a long trial. It will be a slow burn. There's a lot of evidence in this case. But why is the media here? Look around. Why are these people here? Why are the attorneys here? Why is the defendant here? Gary Ferris will not walk through that door. No problem, Judge. Gary will not walk through that door. In this trial, what you have to do is ask yourself, what is the truth? You have to ask yourself certain questions. You do not have to ask yourself, was Gary murdered? He was. The evidence is going to show that. You do not have to ask yourself, was Gary Ferris burned on a burn pile? He was. The question you have to ask is, who did this? Who did it? This is a murder. This is a heinous murder. He was shot, killed, put on a burn pile, and burned. The question you have to ask, what the evidence demands an answer of, is who murdered Gary? Now, these people that are here to see the trial, what I want you to do is they're going to follow the evidence too. I want you to look at me. Don't worry about that. Follow the evidence. The evidence demands an answer, and the answer is close. It's at hand. It's close to me. It's close to you. It was close to Gary. If the object of all legal investigation is the discovery of truth, at this trial, what you have to do is you have to shrink the world. When you see the evidence, this is Cherokee County. They don't have a lot of murders. They definitely don't have a lot of murders when someone's shot and put on a burn pile. You shrink the world. And when you shrink the world, you're going to come to one conclusion and one answer of who. Not what happened, not how it happened, but who did it. And she's near. Frankie, she's don't mind. If I can get this technology to work, and Megan's going to help me here. I want to move. I want to talk loudly so everybody can hear me, but what I want to do is, as we go through this, be comfortable, be at peace as you go through this evidence. Relax and listen to what there is. I know there's a lot going on, but you are the most important people in this matter. It does not matter what I say. It does not matter what the defense says. It matters what does the evidence say. What does it speak? Let me introduce you to the Ferris family. You'll see in front of you there's the family line, the lineage. You'll see on the screen here there's a photograph. You see Gary. Thank you. You see Gary is in this picture, and this is a happy time. This is Emily, the bride in the middle, a daughter. This is a wedding, I think, about 2 years before the murder, 2016. You see Gary, he's in this picture. He's standing there with his wife, the defendant. Now, there are 4 children. And as you go through this, you're going to probably take notes because you hear the same names over and over again. You're going to hear about the Ferris. You're going to hear about the Ferris wheel. Unfortunately for this family is they have drama. They are not a perfect family. My family is imperfect. Everybody's family is. They didn't ask for their life experiences and the good and the bad and ugly to come in. But that's what the evidence is going to show. And I have to present it. I have great sympathy, everybody does, for families like this. But the evidence is going to show what was going on in their family. It's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly, just like anything else. Most families, however, don't consist of murder. Now, in this family, you're going to see Chris. On the right side of the screen, you see Gary and Melody. To the right, as we look at, is Chris. He's the oldest, probably about 37. On the other side is Scott. Scott's about 35. Chris was living, in many ways, his own life. He was married, had his own kids. You hear about the kids. They're going to be here. You're going to hear about Ella and Addison, the grandkids. Scott was in the military over Iraq. He came back for a while, lived on the property, worked the property, had kind of an agreement with his dad that he would work the land and he would get paid. He didn't have a job really after he came back, and then he ended up with the family. But that was his agreement with his dad. Gary was a very generous man, loved his family. So you had the two guys, the two sons, Chris and Scott. Then you had the two girls, Emily in the middle, and Amanda beside her. Amanda was the youngest, the baby, if you would. They were probably around 30, 28, around those age. Gary and Melody got married at a young age. I think it was around 20. 38 years, almost 39. They were married for a long time. They were together, Alabama. Small family. Gary worked hard. You're going to learn a lot about Gary. You're going to learn a lot about Melody. And what you're going to learn is the evidence is going to show that they're both, I dare say, brilliant. He practiced law, corporate law. He went to the University of Alabama. I think he graduated first in his class. Extremely smart, introverted. The defendant, she liked the life of being married to a rich lawyer. Gary did so well when he was in Alabama. The firm he worked for, corporate law, real estate law, things like that, very successful. They sent him to the Atlanta area here to open up an office for the firm. Did very good. Very smart, worked his way up. I think he ended up being a senior partner. Very smart, loved his job. One thing with lawyers, the longer they do it, the longer they get better at it, the more they get better at it, and they stay at it. But sometimes what they do is they don't interact with, because they interact with people all day long. Oftentimes when they get home, they get close, they get small. And Gary was like that. In their wedding, their marriage, they had some issues that we're going to talk about. And it looks like they were happy here. This is about 2016, but there was a lot going on behind the scenes. Gary, you could set the clock to his routine, his habits. He's one of those guys. The question you got to answer in this trial is not was he murdered, not how was he murdered, but who did it. The evidence demands the answer that he was murdered. He was shot and killed, and put on a burn pile. This burn pile behind his house. His remains were found. Not much. Gary was a big guy, about 6'4", 300 pounds, give or take. About 33 pounds remained. When you shrink the world, no robbery, no home invasions, no enemies, no road rage, nothing like that. When you shrink the world, in a case like this, husband and wife, wife kills husband, husband dies. The answer to the question, who did it, sits right there. Melody Walker Farris. Let me talk to you about their property. They were affluent. When I grew up in South Carolina, we say they're rich. They were rich. He made a lot of money. He would make probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Sometimes his paychecks, even after you take all the taxes out, $20,000. They'd have profit sharing and things like that. He made a lot of money. This property that they lived on in Purcell, 2511 Purcell Lane, Cherokee County, it's a hobby farm. If you see, there's actually a road coming down Purcell Lane, and you see that white area, that's dirt. They had horses. If you go up the driveway that's along the trees at the bottom, and then there's a driveway in the middle of this photograph, that's to the barn where Scott stayed. Now, the family had trouble. Chris had some issues with drinking. He got in an argument with his mom about a year for this. She says that he said something along the lines that Chris was going to beat her to a pulp and put her in a pine box or something along those lines. That's what she says. That's what he says. But they had a problem. Scott got back from the military, was living there, getting money from his dad. Emily was married. She had a husband Melody didn't like. He got in some financial troubles, some legal troubles, criminal troubles. Amanda was young. And they all took money from their dad. Not in the bad sense, but he had money. He was willing to do with it. And he'd give him a hard time. When are you going to get a job? When are you going to pay this back? Those type of things. But he could afford it. House, I believe, is worth the property more than $1 million. Now, when you go through your notes, you think about this. We know this case, and sometimes we have to slow down because you don't know the places where this occurred. And the murder occurred in this house. The shooting occurred in the house, in the kitchen, down to the basement. Now, as you look at this house, it's kind of unique in the sense that it's 2 or 3 car garage right here. But as you look at this photograph, you'll see the front. If you go to where that pine tree is, go right behind that pine tree, that's the front. This is looking, if you were kind of looking, if the pond was behind you, you're looking up at what I would call the front, but it's not, it's really the side. I think it's kind of like the east side. But it's got a deck there, and it's a circular deck. And under that deck was where Gary stayed. The basement or the ground level was Gary's domain. That house was the defendant's. She had everything she wanted. It's immaculate. She liked to live the lifestyle. Furs, coats, jewelry, nice paintings, nice furniture, things like that. That was her domain. She was a go-getter. She was tough. She got after it. She cleaned, almost OCD to the point that she cleaned. Her house was beautiful. Gary lived in the bottom. He had a bedroom down there. He had a CPAP. He slept with that CPAP every night. We're going to talk about that. But he stayed down in the bottom. If you kind of walk out, you see where that, it starts on the right side, there's an oval where it juts out. Below that is 2 doors. You won't hear me talk about it. You probably hear me chuckle at some point. There's doors that slide open like this to where he would have his couch and his TV and things like that. I call them American doors because right to the right are French doors. Just how I remember. And you could walk out that American doors, and when you come out there, if you turn left, that's where the burn pile is. This is over by the barn looking back towards the house. They had horses. This is a nice property. This is the barn. This is where Scott stayed. Scott stayed on the top, basically being an employee of his dad. Scott wanted the property, loved the property, liked the property, loved the horses. He was invested in it. He was thinking to move on one day and get another job, but he was locked in this property. And he and his mom worked. They may bicker and things like that, but they worked the property. They did a lot of work. And he lived in that barn there on the top. This is back to the house, transitioning back to the house. If you walk in that front door, this is what you see. Now, as you walk in, you're going to see evidence. If you walk in that front door and I'm staring at the steps, if I'm staring at the steps and I turn right, you're going to go to what I call the kitchen table. If you turn left, there's a bathroom. If you go straight, you're going to go down a hallway to the master bedroom. This is the master bedroom. That door right there, you could walk out and go to the balcony. And that's where that oval porch was. You could stand out over that and look. You could look at the pond. Study room, library, very nice. Very affluent. This is the dining area, looking out towards the pond, nice. This is the kitchen. This is the doorway from the kitchen to the basement. You go down the basement. To the left here, if you look at the picture, there's that light switch and whatnot, then there's that cabinet. Right around the corner is the steps you come down. It's 12 steps down, a landing, 4 steps down. You come down that landing, you stand right there. If you're standing off the steps, you get off the steps, you look straight forward, you're going to look at that bar. This is looking back from the, kind of to the side of the American doors, looking back towards the bar. As you look at this picture, to the right is a hallway. You go down that hallway was Gary's office, where he'd hang out and do stuff, work. He liked to get up in the morning. Because he was a partner, because he'd been doing it so long, because he had those routines, he would get up and go check email. To say that Gary Ferris was a workaholic is an understatement. The man's like a lot of attorneys. Check the emails at night, vacation, it doesn't matter. He's working, he's checking the email, he's busy. He has such patterns and routines you can set your clock by. So as you look here, you go to right's his office. To the left, if you go to the left, there's a hallway that goes to his bedroom. Now, you may want to write these dates down. In July of 2018, we're going to focus on 3 main dates. July 3rd, July 4th, and July 5th. You're going to hear us talk about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Y'all, when I do trials, I am not perfect. I'll mess up names and dates and times. But this is what we're talking about. I'll catch myself and say, I didn't mean 2020, I meant 2018. What we want to do, again, this trial is not about being perfect. It's about the truth, to be authentic. When we did jury selection, you heard me say to be authentic. These are the dates we're going to focus on. July 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And I just want to kind of give an overview of some of the evidence. This is not all the evidence. You're going to hear a lot of evidence, including evidence that we're not going to present. But this is Tuesday, July 3rd. We don't know exactly when Gary was killed, and we don't have to prove that. The evidence does not require us to prove you the exact time that Gary was shot and killed. But we have a very good idea. Tuesday night around 10 p.m. most likely. Last time he used that CPAP was Tuesday morning. A little after midnight, he got on it. He got up that morning and turned it off. And that machine, when they did a search warrant, shows the times. He's not going to bed without that CPAP. He never used it again. We have no reading that was used again. Now, on Tuesday around lunchtime, Gary had an interesting relationship with his family. And they had some good times, but it was also different. I don't know about y'all, but if I go to a restaurant and I see a friend or a family, I'm going to go up and say hey to them, we're going to hang out, we're going to do stuff. Especially if it's my dad. Well, on Tuesday, Scott and the defendant were working, and they decided to go to lunch. They went to Cherokee Ranch restaurant, a local restaurant. While they were there, Gary was already there. He pays his bill and he leaves and doesn't say a word to him. And that's not uncommon. Because their relationship is not a touchy-feely type of relationship in this family. That's not this family. They communicate a lot by text messages, emails, instead of just calling and talking. That afternoon, Scott went to a lake house. He was there that afternoon and evening. There's a text asking about sleeping over for Addison, which is Chris's daughter, the grandchild. There's a text from her, from the defendant saying, what about tomorrow night, not tonight? And that was going to show that the defendant loved her grandchildren. If they were close or she could get to them, she would get to them, but not this night. There was a visit Big Daddy and Grandma. That's what they called Gary, Melody. Big Daddy, Grandma. Chris and Addison came over that night. Gary was getting the burn pile ready to go. He liked to burn things. He liked to do it. They were there talking to him, seeing what he's doing, and they left that night because couldn't stay, so they went back. About 10:52 p.m., there's a phone call between the defendant and Scott, and it was basically the defendant saying, the horses are out, when are you coming home? Scott's with his friends. He's down at the lake or whatnot. She's calling, when are you coming home? The horses are out. He gets home, Scott does, about 11:30. Sees the burn pile's burning. I think it says something along, I see Dad's burning the burn pile, or he's burning the burn pile, or something like that. Wednesday morning, Scott gets a debit card from his mom because he can go play golf. He has this thing on 4th of July that he would play golf. He and his buddies. You're going to hear about his buddies, Philip and Ted. That's just what he did. So about 6:15, I think he goes to the door. I think he calls or texts his mom, the defendant, says, needs the card. She comes out, gives him the card. He goes to the ATM real quickly, right down the road, gets some money, and comes back to go play golf. He's playing golf with his friends, Chris and family. They go to the Peachtree Road Race. Chris and Aston, they then go to the Cracker Barrel, I believe, that morning. Scott goes to the lake on a pool party. He's there in the afternoon and evening. The defendant actually leaves for Lake Lanier to go be with Amanda and Chad Bruce. And you're going to see in things here. You're going to see it's kind of this way. And Chad Bruce was the fiance, now husband to Amanda. Amanda Bruce was Amanda Ferris. And they go there and hang out, and you're going to hear about that. And at some point, they come back from the lake. Chris drops Aston off at the house on Wednesday night because they want to see and hang out. Now, these times may change. I may get them wrong, but you're going to hear the times as we go through. Wednesday night, July 4th, kids around 11 or 12. They come in, they live out of state, they come in, they want to see everybody, they want to see Big Daddy, they want to ride some of the stuff on the property, they want to do things. It's 4th of July, and the defendant wants the kids to go to bed early. July 4th, 3rd, Tuesday, 4th, Wednesday, 5th, Thursday. The defendant goes to Walmart, checks out around 9:30. Scott spoke with the defendant and Amanda about 11 o'clock that morning. Now she goes and gets some supplies and some things at Walmart. So here's 5th is where it breaks open. Scott has got a connection or connect for some golf clubs. He's going to go to the PGA and get some golf clubs. He sees Amanda up at the house, and so he's driving down his driveway from the barn to leave. And he sees Amanda and some people, goes up and starts talking to him. And defendant is asking, have you seen your dad? And it's got to be sarcastic. And he can be hard on his mom. He talks to her. They kind of go back, and he says some things, kind of sarcastically. We talk about where's dad, things like that. And they start looking for him. Now, the defendant starts asking people, are you on the bank accounts or something like that? As in, maybe he's using the funds or the accounts to try to find where he's at. But his Mercedes is at the house. And been moved. Now, they would say Gary would kind of go away sometimes and just kind of disappear. Now, he was last seen on Tuesday night by someone other than the defendant. So Wednesday, Thursday. Now they're just starting asking, where's he at? They go around the property. At some point, the defendant's behind the burn pile, and she points out to Scott, gets his attention, brings him up there. Something about goats. Did you burn goats? Scott gets to that burn pile. He was in the military. He's proud he was in the military. He tries to take a leadership role when things break bad, and he finds his own father's remains. He calls 911. You're going to hear it. During this time that's going on, a couple of weeks before this, while the cable guy or something was over at the house, Scott saw a .38 pistol. It was in a leather holster of some sort. And he thinks something's afoot. Foul play. Something's not right. He's suspicious of his mom. You're going to hear how he is. And he starts talking about this missing gun. And people are like, what gun? What are you talking about? He starts talking about this missing gun that was downstairs in the basement. 38. And nobody knows anything about 38 or anything like that. But Scott has a suspicion that something's up. He actually says a statement to the effect of, did my mom finally do something? When he talks to a friend. Now the defense is going to point at Scott. Or other people. But the evidence is going to show it's Melody. No one else. It's her. And what you have to do is follow the evidence. And what does the evidence say? What does it speak? What is the truth? It's not Scott. Law enforcement gets there, they start talking to people, and when they get there, what you're going to see is they get a call to someone in need, emergency services. So they bring the big long back thing you carry people on like a stretcher. They bring all this defibrillator, things like that. They get there. They don't know. They think they're going to find a person back there who had a heart attack or stroke or heat exhaustion or something and pass out. And they get back there and they find nothing but remains. Law enforcement still doesn't really know what's going on in the beginning. They think it was just an emergency. They don't think anything about crime. They start talking to people, and then they realize the conditions of the remains had to burn for a long time. The CSI people at the sheriff's office, they're like, all right, we have to call in an expert, forensic anthropologist, Dr. Gooden. Comes in, and you're going to see what she does. They interview the defendant, they interview Scott, they ask him what's going on. And in the beginning, the defendant, she starts right off the bat talking about, well, Gary had these medical conditions. And then she says his family's got some mental issues. He was suicidal. And she starts laying that foundation of these other things. Any enemies? No. Will the kids do this? No. Anything else? No. Anything missing? No, 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 no. She's laying the foundation. These are the pictures when law enforcement gets there. Dr. Gooding gets involved. They start marking it. And then things change. When they get the remains of Gary, we're stipulated that these remains are Gary. He's actually identified the dental records. He's burned up so bad. When they get there, they find in his rib a 38, they think it's a 380 in the beginning, but it's a 38 special bullet projectile. It's in his left ribs. It's front to back, anterior to posterior. It's in his ribs. So now they think he's medical condition, but he's burned up too bad. Then when they're doing it, that's a bullet. Changes everything. There's no gun. We do not know where the gun is. We look for the gun. The missing gun is evidence of consciousness of guilt. Because if it was a suicide, the gun would be right there. If it's murder, you can't get rid of the evidence. Burn the body, get rid of the gun. Things change now. It's a homicide investigation. Now, this family had problems. And they had disagreements. You're going to hear about dishes being broken. There's several instances of dishes being broken. One time, when she's talking about dishes, you're going to hear the defendant talking about, I had some dishes on top of the car and they fell off onto the ground and broke. Scott's going to talk about an incident where his mom said some very terrible things about his dad, wishing terrible things upon him when she broke some dishes because she was mad when she went down to the basement where he lived and got the dishes. He spilled Mountain Dew or something like that. The man loved his Mountain Dew. Loved it. Cigarettes and Mountain Dew. She got so mad that she broke the dishes. Slammed them. Found it in his trash can. A set of dishes. When she's talking, the defendant is kind of all things to all people. That's what the evidence is going to show you. It's going to pivot. It's going to pivot. You're going to hear about two people in this case that pivot. She pivots. She's talked to, she's smart, she knows what's going on, they're asking questions. She says, at one point, their marriage is not good. They live in the same household, but they're not living really as husband and wife. There are some good times, they try to do some stuff. They're living in separate rooms, separate floors. But at one point, she comes across and they ask, you've been married to him for 38 years, and, if it's that bad, and you'll hear about how she describes the marriage and things, why'd you stay with him? I took a vow to him. I took a vow. The evidence is going to show in this case that the defendant is loyal to two people. Very loyal. She's loyal to a man. There's something called prior difficulties. About 10 years before the murder, the defendant had an affair, we believe, with a guy named Ted Wiley. Ted was in a relationship with Gary's sister. They met, they hung out, and they started doing stuff, and the family knew what was going on. They separated, we believe because of this. Gary considered divorce, didn't do it. They reconciled, but they lost trust. And this is where things change. The whole relationship changed because of this. Now, Gary worked with a lady, probably had a fling or something with her, not to the same degree, years ago. So they both had their issues. But the degree and the extent and the blatantness of this changed everything. And Gary started controlling finances. Her mindset was, to law enforcement, I took a vow to him. But you're going to hear evidence in a text message between her and another guy that would shrink the world and rule out. A guy that's a neighbor that met her when she would walk, because she would walk all the time. She's tough. In a text message, when she was upset with Gary, we believe, she's talking about, she said, my response to his fit he threw was, I hope you die alone in a gruesome death. She's asked on law enforcement, she didn't say anything about hoping he died or anything like that. Terry responds and says, there you go, he's going to push you over the edge. I know, and that scares me. Told him finally to go where could not even see or hear him. It would be in his best interest. You're going to see some text messages and things in this. She portrays this, pivots. But an ever constant in their marriage, tension, an ever constant tension is money. She did not like that Gary would use his money the way he did. It's referred to sometimes by people as the Ferris wheel because there was drama. And there was definitely drama. Chris had his issues. Melody didn't really like Chris. Chris would use checking account numbers and credit card numbers and things like that. And he had paid for, coming up to this point, he had paid for a beach vacation. I think we were in a condo or something like that. And Melody was furious. She did not like that Gary was just going to go with him. And Gary basically he'd say stuff, but he'd write the check or he'd say, okay. He wouldn't really do anything. It's his kids, his sons. He could afford it. She'd say things like, this is the last straw. I've had it, I'm taking measures. It shows that her mindset is this money, this money, this money. And that leads to this. Bullet in his ribs. They go in the house, they look at the house. These are steps going down to the basement. There's blood. There's going to be evidence of blood and cleanup in the kitchen. Her domain. Down the steps. When you get off those steps, if you take off those steps, you can see it. Scott saw some blood on the floor down there. Law enforcement saw it. They go back and spray Blue Star. This chemical stuff that'll light us up, and you'll see it. You see those 4, 3, 2, 1 placards there? It's a trail of blood. I've circled this so you can see. Down there is a sofa. There's an ottoman, I believe is the term. And as you get closer, law enforcement found another bullet. We do not know how many times Gary was shot. We know he was shot and killed. We know there are at least 2. The blood trail from the kitchen up there, we believe the evidence is they had an argument. She shot him. He goes downstairs trying to get away. She shoots him again. Whether he was able on his own to get out those doors or she got him out herself. Topped and bombed. No home invasion. No robbery. Nothing. And that brings us to what we call means, motive, and opportunity. How do you get away with a murder if there's no confession? How do you get away with a murder if there's no video of it? How do you get away with a murder if you try to burn and destroy all the evidence? You don't. When you use your common sense and all the evidence to put it together to shrink the world, and the only reasonable answer is she did it. For example, if they say Scott did it, Scott's not going to shoot us dead when he's paying all the bills. It's a gravy train. That's just not going to happen. Let's first talk about opportunity. The reason why you shrink the world down, and you will see at the times in this case, when he was killed and when his body was moved, when things are going on, The only person that's going to be at that house, the only person is her. No one else. Just her. Sure, people were coming and going, but not when things were going on. The other thing you consider is sometimes in the case with strong evidence is deception, mendacity. When you see that, she's cloaked in lies. And you'll see it through the trial. The evidence will show that. Here's some things she says about fires. The context, the common sense, the circumstantial evidence. Gary liked to set things on fire. He liked to burn stuff. I think about 2008, they had another house, Alpharetta, that they moved from to the farm. He set, I think, the backwoods on fire or something at night. Caught him on fire. She hated that with understandable concern. That's dangerous. People are scared of fires. I get it. She's concerned about that. And then in the same house before this murder in 2016, I believe, he set the house on fire from the basement up, smoking cigarettes in the trash can, left them there, and they caught the house on fire. She went after him. She is strong-willed. She has a backbone. She's tough-minded. And she would tell him how she felt. She told investigators things like this. I tried to put together some of the things you'll hear. She had gotten so scared of fire after that. She had been just scared of the fire. She was scared to death. She figured Gary would burn her house down. They just didn't leave him here much alone because he would, I think she said, break a steel trap or something like that. She told Gary, don't leave the fire. She told Gary, please don't leave the fire. She told Gary, when discussing dinner, that you cannot go off and leave that fire. She told Gary, you got to watch the fire. She said there's no reason with him. He's a lawyer. He was going to burn it or die trying. Slip of tongue, but that's what she said. That was the opportunity. It's going to be her. Means. Means is how could you have done it? Because the question you're going to have in your mind that's going to boil down to this case is how did that little lady get that big man on the burn pile? She's a cowgirl, farm girl. Her daddy owned a hardware store growing up. She's been around it. She had ropes, leads, straps, tow lines. Did I mention they had a tractor? Means. Necessity is the mother of all inventions. You just committed murder, you'll be motivated if you have the means. Did I also say tell you they had an RTV? She knew I was driving a boat. Wednesday morning, Scott leaves to go play golf about 7 o'clock that morning. She doesn't leave, go to the lake till around 12 something. No one's at the house. She comes back that night and tells the kids, get to go to bed early. Motive. In my business, there's nothing new under the sun. You don't have to be smart to be an attorney. You have to have common sense. And when it comes to motive, the question you're going to have is, one is, how does she get him out there? That's answered. Evan's going to answer that. Why did she do this? Why would a wife, even for a husband she doesn't like, he has money. Well, she didn't inherit, intestate succession. She gets stuff under Georgia law. Even if he died of an accident, she'd probably get more money. Motive. Let me introduce you to a person called Rusty. Law enforcement trying to figure out what's going on. They're at the house, they get consent, things like that. They search her purse and they find, the things you think you find in a purse, but they find this bank card, credit card, debit card, whatever it is, this financial card. And they find the name Roy Barton on it. And so they're asking him, hey, who's Roy Barton? Well, she says, my cousin, Martha Jane, was married to Roy Barton years ago. In fact, in 2014, that's when this kind of starts off. But she doesn't mention Rusty. She's playing it off as Roy Barton Sr. and he's died. And I just had that, forgot it was there, something along those lines. The Rusty Barton, though, the Rusty Barton, is not senior, it's junior. And he's a character. He's reluctant. He's talking about the evidence going to show he's going to change. You're going to be introduced to Rusty Barton, who's from Tennessee, and we're bringing him in. I do not know what he will say on that stand. I know what he said in the past, and he's flip-flop. That's what the evidence is going to show. But you're going to be able to use the law, which is called prior inconsistent statements. You're going to be able to judge when he said this, and when he says this, and when he says this, what do you believe? A little background on Rusty. He knew them since teenagers. I think he knew her when she was 15. Martha Jane, which is her second cousin, but more like a mother figure. She loves Martha Jane. Martha Jane's a good woman, a godly woman. Martha Jane loves the defendant. They were married to Rusty's father. So Martha Jane and Roy Sr. were married. Rusty and the defendant became romantic in about 2014. She was up there helping her, Martha Jane. I think she had open heart surgery. In fact, Rusty actually took Martha Jane to Emily's wedding. Up close and personal. The affair was going on for about 4 years, 2014, 2018. And after. Gary knew about it. There's an email he received that put him on notice about from Rusty's girlfriend. You're going to hear him ask questions about Rusty talking to her, telling her, don't do that. Rusty did internet searches about wedding rings when law enforcement was talking to him. They would rendezvous in Dalton, which is about halfway from Tullahoma, Tennessee, and Alpharetta. Almost halfway exactly. Exit 333. They'd meet up there. In the beginning, it was monthly, several weeks ago, and then it became weekly. She would just disappear. The family knew what was going on. They had suspicions, but they didn't realize who Rusty was until this broke. They kind of have a 6-month plan. Rusty believed, based on what the defendant was telling him, according to Rusty, that Gary had some esophagus cancer or something, bleeding, something going on, so he was sick and he was going to die. And they kind of had this plan after Gary passed away. Naturally, they would, for 6 months, lay low, and then they would come back and get together. They were in love. They talked like junior high kids in love for the first time. All the time. They had a regular pattern. Law enforcement interviewed Rusty on certain occasions. There's these days where Rusty was interviewed and basically goes from, I don't know anything, and then they press him. We told you in a trial like this, it can be a contact sport. The attorneys can get after it. We can get after it. I can get after it. I may get after it with Rusty. I'll be professional. But they did the good cop, bad cop with Rusty because he didn't want to give up on Melody. And you're going to hear how they talk to him about this is a death penalty case. You can be arrested for this. You can be, what side do you want to be on in the courtroom? All techniques law enforcement use to have someone talk. He talks to them. And they use him in the sense of they would get information from him, and then he was willing to cooperate and record some calls and some things like that. But look at this pattern here. He talked for some time, and in June of 2019, he recants something he told law enforcement in July of 2018. And y'all familiar with the first 48 hours? In law enforcement, in this business, you get to someone as quickly as they can because if there's time, they will change. Feelings change. In the beginning, he says one thing, and then he gives up more and more. It's like pulling teeth. You finally get it out. But he recants. And this is what he recants. The evidence in the case is going to show that when you shrink the world to the only person that had the motive was her, the only person that was home when this could have occurred, Tuesday evening, going in from Tuesday the 3rd to Wednesday the 4th, about 2 o'clock in the morning, law enforcement talks to Rusty and says, all right, what did she say? And he describes it as the last minute, last conversation. This is what he tells law enforcement. She said, Gary's in the burn pile. No. She said, he is in the burn pile. And I said, what? And she said, he is in the burn pile. I said, do not say another word and do not tell me anything. I do not need to know that. This is what, before the murder's known, anything like that, he's on the phone. The record's going to show that he had 3 or 4 main phone calls during this time. It's going to show that his pattern when he would talk to her was abnormal for this time. There's a phone call, and he says, I talked to her. And this is what she said. He's in the burn pile. This would have been July 4th. Now he comes back a year later and recants. Well, his presence and companionship is with the defendant. Law enforcement gets arrest warrants, goes up to Tullahoma, Tennessee to arrest her, and guess who she's with? Rusty. After she's arrested, she's in jail before she bonds out. There's actually jail calls. And you're going to hear some of those. And we told you there's going to be calls and things like that. And you're going to have to be patient with us. It's going to be a lot of information. It's just a piece of this puzzle. But at the end of the day, it's going to show the defendant. So his past is being arrested. He recants to law enforcement. No, she didn't say that. I was pressured. I was under duress. I was taking sleeping pills. I was under alcohol. And then she's talking to him on a phone call. And this is just a part. Now, you're going to hear the whole thing later on. But this is what we call consciousness of guilt. The evidence is going to show that she says this, and this is not what an innocent person would say to her lover.
You alright?
No. Well, like a long time ago, I just stopped talking.
Right.
I haven't done anything.
I know that, Norman.
It's because what you keep talking about, you're going to single-handedly hang me.
Speak the truth. This is what the charges. Malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing death, and other, making false statements. We are here because Gary cannot be here. And the only reason we're here is by her hand. Malice murder is the unlawful killing of somebody with malice aforethought. It doesn't mean someone's wicked in that sense, or malice in the sense that is hatred or things like that. It is the unlawful intent to kill. And the judge is going to charge you on that. One shot. Could be felony murder. They're fighting and she just reacts. 2 shots and burning. It's depraved. Felony murder, the evidence is going to show that even if she didn't intend to, with malice, to kill him, that intent to kill, that she had that gun in it, just went off. Not the case because she shot him twice. That's still felony murder. It's not the intent to kill, it's the intent to do the underlying felony, which is aggravated assault. Pointing a gun at someone or shooting them, and they die. Even if you didn't mean for them to die, it's still felony murder. There's no malice involved. There's no intent to kill. Aggravated assault is just the shooting. Concealing death of another. The law is designed to prevent certain conduct, and the case that you have before you shows what it's designed to prevent. Not only was Gary Ferris murdered, and he has friends and family that watch this, that are here, but they were deprived of him. Because she burned him up. False statements because she lied to law enforcement about Rusty. Y'all forget about all this out here. My job, representing the district attorney, is to present this case to you without fear, favor, or affection. Your job, under your oath, is to speak the truth. I talked to you about veritas. you see the word verdict. It's truth speak. It's the word veritas with dit in Latin, to speak. When you're done with this case, take all the time you need. Forgive me when I bumble through things, when I get sideways, when I'm doing my job. But remember, I am representing a voice that has been snuffed out and taken away. And Megan Frankis and I are going to present you with the evidence. And there's two sides to the truth. That is, where you see the deceit and the lies in this case, that points to who did it. When you see the opportunity, the means, and the motive, money, sex, new life, the truth, as sad as it is, as hard as it is that the defendant murdered and desecrated her own husband.
That's right.
Would this be a good time for a break, or?
I'm going to let y'all go, and then we'll break after that. Reset. Anybody need a break? All right. I got one taker. All right. We'll go ahead and take a break. It'll be, if one of you are going to, then all the dominoes will fall, so it'll be 10 minutes. So we'll go ahead and take a break. That's fine. All right. They started it a little earlier.